call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Boom.
Oh my god!
And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now today we will take a look at our third figure from the first digital wave from McFarlane. Now previously we did take a look at Rebirth Batman Blue and the Silver Age Hal Jordan. Both figures that actually exceeded my expectations, really surprised by them. Now this by far is my most anticipated one because of customs that I want to do, but it is also my least favorite because the promo images of this figure did not do it any favors. Even my boy Botten, who's usually pretty hyped about these figures, said that this is one of the worst figures McFarlane has released. But I have my own brain, I have my own opinion, so I'm going to break it down and take a look at it and come to my own final conclusion. Now, before we actually get into this, I do want to bring something up, and that is somebody commented, and I really appreciate everybody that comments. Really fun to interact with you guys. Even if it's negative, it's, makes me laugh sometimes. But I think that if you don't have more than 5,000 or 10,000 subscribers, you should be really trying to interact with as many people that watch your channel as you can. Now, though I am still not monetized and not really looking forward to it anytime soon, every time YouTube sends me a message that to join their, partner program, I basically tell them to pound sand, and I will monetize my channel when I, feel like it. But this guy actually commented about how I feel like I'm getting ripped off when McFarlane adds extra heads, because then I have to actually buy another figure to supply the body, because of course I have talked about this. I am, a little bit disturbed. And one of my collecting habits is that I like to display both heads that come with a figure. And he really got me to thinking, and I'm not too proud of a person that if I'm wrong, I'm going to be like, oh no, it's because of this, and start doing, mental backflips till I get out of it. I broke it down and he's actually correct, because I'm going to try and go through it really quickly. It's kind of it's kind of confusing a little bit, but here it goes. If McFarlane releases one figure with a mask, and then he releases another figure unmasked, that means that I quite literally have to buy 4 figures. Now, the reason for this is because, as you all know, I like to have a complete mint in box collection. So that means that not only do I need one figure to display, but I also need one figure to have in box. Now, there is a lot of things that go into this, because price is definitely an issue. If you're talking about a collector's edition, you're talking about, increasing the price, because 30, 60, 90, it gets to 100 really quick. But if you are talking about your basic $20 McFarlane figure, I can end up buying 3 just for $60. So that brought me to the conclusion that regardless if a figure comes with a head in box, if it is basically $20, I only need to buy 3. One to keep mint in box, one to display the masked head, and one to display the unmasked head. Now, what this really does is actually adds to my fodder, what I use to do custom work, which is honestly really appreciated. So it's actually a win, a win-win for me. I'm getting extra fodder. I'm getting to display both head sculpts, and it should, in theory, only cost me $60, while before it would have cost me $80 to buy 2 of each of the heads represented in box. So I know it's kind of hard to understand, but trust me, I did the formulating, I did the science behind this. But anyways, it's actually benefiting me if McFarlane adds extra heads with the packaging. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's take a look at this third figure, which is classic Aquaman, and take a really honest look and tell you the pros and tell you the cons. Now, he does look pretty aquatic in the packaging, but let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. Now, first, he does come with a standard black DC Multiverse stand, but of course, this one has that pretty sweet McFarlane digital logo on it. Now, I am keeping these separated because over here I have a giant stack of just plain black stands, which I really do need to get rid of or do something with, but it is kind of an inside joke to just collect them here in the mountain. So we'll hold on to that. Now, he also comes with his digital card, and on the front, you do have some source material that doesn't necessarily go with the figure that is in the box. Now, we all know this about McFarlane. I talked about it in my last video, and that's that don't think too hard. Don't try and figure out what McFarlane decides to do, because you could go a little batty, by trying to figure it out. Just go with it. Whatever you don't like, get it out of the way. But what you do like, really enjoy it in your collection. So this is a more modern take on Arthur Curry. And while I look at this Aquaman, I kind of think more of the old school classic Aquaman artwork, which I really wish McFarlane would tighten it up and start to get a lot of these little details matching up, which I think would actually improve sales and get a lot of the more collector portion of the buyers happy. But for now, it is what it is. Now on the back, you do have some information. So we'll hold on to this. Now you get another card that actually has the digital code on the back, and you could go into the interwebs and oogle your digital version of these figures. Not for me, but I won't knock anybody for, enjoying doing that. That's fine. Now you also get some cool accessories. You do get some swimming hands. Now these are not more of those splayed hands. These are definitely more like swimming hands, paddling hands. Definitely more like traditional Aquaman swimming hands. But I really do like them, and they do match the texture on the gloves, which is really awesome. And if you wanted to, you could actually add a little bit of paint on these and add them with your old versions of Aquaman that we have received. So we'll definitely hold on to these. You also get his trident. Now this one's a little bit different than the ones we have received before. Instead of gold, this is more of like an opaque, kind of pastel yellow. Looks a little bit candy-ish, which is always scrumptious, but it is the same exact mold as the previous ones. I do have one right here, so you can compare them, and they are exactly the same, except of course in the paint. More gold on one and more sun yellow on the other. Now, you know me, I like to mix it up, so if you ever wanted to, you could just put this gold trident with your Aquaman. It's no big deal, but we'll definitely hold on to this version. Now you also get that coveted smiling Aquaman head. Now this is a point of contention for a lot of collectors because a lot of people really hate this head sculpt, and I have my own opinions, and I even actually kind of, in my opinion, figured out why it looks so, disturbed and freaky. But it does fit well with this body and has that swirling hair, which is something that you have to decide with when you're doing an Aquaman figure. Are you going to just have your standard, classic Aquaman hair, or are you going to have it, waving in the water? So luckily, there's always, chances to do different versions, or if you customize, you can swap out the hair and give them a more classic, pretty boy look. But we'll also hold on to that head. And finally, you get this little guy. A lot of people were wondering, who is this? Is he articulated? I think his name's like Quisp or something like that. He's a little, freaky, aquatic little guy. Now, he does have articulation in the arms and surprisingly in the head as well. So that kind of adds to the value of this little guy from the older classic comics from Aquaman. And that is definitely why they should have took more care into the artwork that they use with this figure. Definitely could have just used like some classic Aquaman artwork that actually has Quisp in there. But at the end of the day, we do have our figure and we do have our cool accessories, which is definitely the bottom line. Now, after all that, let's go ahead and take a closer look at this guy. Now, won't really be going over articulation because we have seen this tons of time before. The original long-haired modern Aquaman. We also had the Flashpoint Aquaman. We've had tons of versions of Aquaman, even the Page Punchers Aquaman. So, I mean, all the articulation is definitely standard. But first impressions, now, I'm going to point out things that I thought were going to, bug me. And surprisingly, some of the things that I thought were going to be a negative are just completely a non-issue. Now, the main draw to this Aquaman figure is definitely the color scheme. On the scaling, you have that more classic orange Aquaman color, while the original Aquaman release had a sort of goldish, darker orange scaling. This one is molded definitely in a more Super Friends sort of orange, which I definitely enjoy. You have yellow around the belt, which is another classic detail that goes more with a classic Aquaman. And the green for the gloves and the lower part of the body is also a lighter green than the original release, harkening back to those classic Aquaman images. So, right off the bat, I do like this figure, although it is basically just a repaint. But being a pretty big classic Aquaman figure, not so much modern or even the Momoa version, not a big fan of that. I'm more of a traditional Aquaman guy, but everybody could choose their own versions. We also have that Hook Aquaman coming up shortly that we'll be taking a look at from the Justice League America wave. So I am pretty happy with this release. Now, if you take a closer look at the head sculpt, I definitely do not have a problem with this head sculpt. I think the only negative it has is actually the skin tone. It doesn't really match exactly. I mean, if you're looking at it from far away, it's not a big glaring problem. But when you actually get in close, you could really tell the difference in the skin tone, which makes me kind of feel like if you were to give this head a little bit of a wash, it might, darken in the details and raise it up just a little bit more than this, plain plastic mold that it was released in. But we'll look at that later on. But I am definitely not hating this head sculpt. A little bit of a stern look on this Aquaman head. You got the flowing hair. And he looks like he could actually fit in your classic Justice League lineup. But definitely more of a display piece to show on his own because, of course, the hair. It could be in the wind, but we all know it's supposed to be underwater. But I'm definitely enjoying this a lot more than I thought I would. Now, as I said before, not too much into the articulation. You got the same waist articulation, shoulder articulation, which actually brings in another detail. And that is that on this shoulder, they have that sort of Aquaman symbol that was molded on to the Flashpoint Aquaman. And I'm not sure the reasoning behind this, but if you look at the original Endless Winter Aquaman, there was no such symbol. So I don't know if they don't have this mold anymore, or if they had to actually etch in this symbol into that mold, which makes it, non-reversible. You can't go back to the way it originally was. Or it could be a slight, mistake by the factories over there in China. But I will say this, and that is that as much as I knew that this was a problem and I knew that this happened, it just doesn't stand out to me. It actually, blends right in, and you can't really tell since it doesn't have any different color paint on it, like gold or yellow. It just blends in, and it's not as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be. Now, preparing for this classic Aquaman release, everybody should know I ended up buying 5 of those original Endless Winter Aquamans because I knew I was going to want to have different bodies to use all the heads and do some pretty crazy kit bashing and customizing. And in fact, my patience was paid off because I did end up doing some pretty cool little kit bashing that we'll take a look at later on. Now, let's talk about the smiling head sculpt. Now, there just was something off about this. And although you could use this the way it is out of package, and you kind of got to pose them in a certain way that the smiling head fits with the position that you have them in. You can, pose them up with this little guy here and have a sort of, carefree, Aquaman feeling, a little bit of like melancholy, comic book stylings. But there is just something off putting about the head. If you take a really closer look, it's just weird and gives me some really bad vibe. I wasn't sure what it was, but I kind of kept looking at it until I pretty much figured out what it is about this smiling head sculpt. Now, at first I thought it was the grin because it is a pretty cheesy grin, but then I figured out it is most definitely the eyes. The eyes are what make this guy look pretty kooky. They are just set so close together. And I compared it with this, regular head, and definitely this regular head, his eyes are more straight on, while this smiling head, they're kind of almost cross-eyed. They're so, narrow together. And I actually took it upon myself to try and repaint them and separate them a little more. And I have to be honest, now I really like this head sculpt. That definitely was the problem. Now you can see he's kind of like a waving, happy-go-lucky Aquaman. So that little paint job that I did to the eyes, separating the gap between them, really ended up being the big game changer. So now I'm actually happy to have this head. You can throw it on one of these modern bodies and it'll work perfectly. Or you could be like me and actually have 2 more of these coming so that you could just display this head with this body. The possibilities are truly endless, but really a fan of this of this smiling head now. So although I had to put some work in it because honestly, the way it comes out of the package is really disturbing, but I did take a negative and make it a positive. Now, of course, you could, place the trident in his hand, which is an always classic look with the Aquaman. You can actually pop out the left gripping hand. And finally, we have a different alternate option for for his left hand, and instead put that swimming open hand on there, which just allows for more possibilities in figure photography and posing. Really love getting these alternate hands from McFarlane. So all in all, I wasn't let down by this release like I thought I would be. And I know some people could think like, oh, it's horrible and you're just making it look good. So, so you could kiss McFarlane's behind, but that is definitely not true. I actually was really anticipating this figure to do some kit bashing and some custom work. Now, scale wise, I put him next to the Hal Jordan just to see the height. They fit really perfectly together. There's no problems in the height. Now, you can actually make this Aquaman taller by doing the thigh lift. And I've done that with another one that I'm working on. But that's just your preference if you want them a little taller or you want them to be average height. Now let's go ahead and actually bring in the famous Endless Winter Aquaman, long haired, bearded, and with that rather interesting side eye that, that all of these Aquaman came with. Now, I actually did also make a custom of this Aquaman. That's one of the reasons I bought so many, because I didn't have a straight looking on version. But now I actually do. I painted the eyes and gave this Endless Winter Aquaman a more direct looking gaze. So this is all the fun I was going to have with these different bodies. Now we'll go ahead also and bring out my classic version of Aquaman. Now, this is the famous one with the NECA Flash Gordon head. And I actually bought some more Flash Gordons because I was anticipating this Aquaman release. So I do have another Flash Gordon head. Now, this one has some really blue eyes, which I actually knew was going to fit well with this classic Aquaman body. So there's just so many things you could do. You could put the long hair on this classic body. You can put the NECA head on this classic body, which really looks like a cool traditional Aquaman. I've just been having so much fun that I completely forgot about the negative things that I didn't enjoy about this figure. Now, from here moving forward, I'm going to do some kit bashes. I'm going to do some repainting. I should be, taking some figure photography and putting those on my Instagram. But I definitely feel good about this release, and I am going to enjoy adding this one to the collection. So pretty interesting to think that I enjoyed the Blue Rebirth Batman. It wasn't my favorite. The Hal Jordan, as I said, is almost perfect out of the packaging. There's basically nothing you would need to change from the Silver Age Hal Jordan. He's beautiful. And now I really enjoyed this classic Aquaman. So this whole wave was not bad at all. I really enjoy it, and my collection continues to grow. You guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.